What is the number one exercise that you want to get better at in the gym? For most people, for almost everyone, it is the bench press. Everyone wants a bigger bench. Everyone wants 315, some 225, some 405. We all want a fat, strong ass bench press. But how do you get it? Why have you plateaued on 185? Why is it so hard? In this video, I'll tell you how. So why is it that the bench press for you is so hard to grow? I'll say it straight away in the video because it's a huge part of anything related to lifting, but genetics. Your genetics are probably the thing that's most limiting you with bench press. If you have everything else down, as in you're eating food, you're sleeping, you're doing everything you need to do to achieve your higher bench press, your genetics are probably the thing that's getting in your way. However, if you're benching less than 3 plates, it is most likely not your genetics, because I am pretty confident that almost anyone in a decade of training, or even less for most people, can hit 3 plates on bench press. Every single person, unless you have some kind of disability or something, everyone watching this video that's a normal lifter can hit 315 in at least a decade. Most people in half a decade. You can do this if you focus on your bench press for the first 5 or even 4 or 3 years of lifting, depending on your genetics, but it is possible. The thing about bench press is more than the squat or deadlift, it actually relies on your total strength. Like the squat and the deadlift, there are very many ways to manipulate the movement so that you can pull more weight. A slight change in like your macros or the amount of food you ate the day before changes your squat and deadlift a lot more than it does for the bench press. At least that's what I've noticed personally. Maybe because I'm lower body dominant. But the thing is, the deadlift, if you change up your stance even a little bit, if you change up your grip or anything, you can lift 20 more pounds. It's absolutely absurd. But the thing with bench is, it just seems like it's purely strength based, or at least way more than the squat and the deadlift. And you got to keep this in mind because the way you train for your bench has to be overall developing your upper body and pushing strength. And a lot of people think it's just pushing strength, but as you'll see in this video, there's a lot of pulling strength related to it as well. So keep that in mind as we go through it. And of course, lower body matters too, because we're going to get into leg drive because that is important. So tips to consider for your form: you got to make sure you have a decent arch, not like a power lifter, Olympic weightlifter arch where you're literally looking like a shrimp, or like a reverse shrimp, I guess. But you got to have a decent arch. You want to get your chest up, decrease the range of motion, and kind of stabilize your shoulders. You want to have leg drive, obviously. The way you do leg drive is you kind of have like a leg extension type movement where you kind of like with your legs, you kind of extend at your knees. But it's kind of like a drive, like it's a little pulse. Squeeze your glutes and you kind of drive up with your chest. There's a bunch of videos on leg drive. I'm not going to get into it too much, but it really does help increase strictly your bench strength. It's not the best for hypertrophy because you're taking the load off your chest, but it's good for your strength. If you're going strictly for strength, you want to actually bring the bar down to your lower chest instead of like up here. If you bring it up here, you're kind of like this, and you can see like your elbows are flared, and so you're putting a lot of tension on your elbows, or sorry, your shoulders rather. And it's just not a good place to be when you're trying to bench for the most amount of strength. So bring the bar down here. Your shoulders are tucked in. You can't even see this, but your shoulders are tucked in. And so your elbows are tucked in rather. Keep mixing those two up. And then you kind of drive out from the bottom of your chest. And it's kind of like a J shape. You might have seen it where it's like you bring the bar down, you're like at eye level, and you bring it down to your lower chest and you push it back up to eye level. That's something that most people are saying works best, and I do think it does actually work best for strength strictly. So keep that in mind as well. And one other thing I don't see a lot of people talking about is trying to push yourself into the bench instead of pushing the bar up. Most people have their head up like this on the bench and they're not actually pushing themselves into the bench. It's like the bar is like a wall and you're pushing yourself against the wall, so you push yourself into the bench as much as possible. Keep that cue in mind instead of just trying to move the bar up, and I guarantee that will help you move some more weight. So there's some preliminaries. The calorie surplus. If you're not a calorie surplus, your bench press is almost never going to grow as a natural. If you're on stuff, then it's a different story. But if you're natural, you need to be in a calorie surplus to actually grow your bench press. 9 times out of 10, this is the case. I'm not talking about the newbie lifter who can go in there and add 10 pounds every week. I'm talking about someone who's been training for 2 years at least and has kind of stumped their progress on the bench press. They've plateaued. You need to be in a calorie surplus, especially for bench that relies a lot on your overall strength and your overall output, which relies a lot on your eating. Sleep, hydration, key things. I mean, I'm not going to go into that. You need to be sleeping, you need to be hydrating properly. It's just pretty simple. Train your push muscles at least 2 times per week. A lot of people can say 1 per week. You're not a professional bodybuilder. You are someone who's trying to increase your bench press. So you need to increase the frequency at which you train your push muscles. And a lot of people, they might follow a bro split, and that's not ideal for increasing your bench press. because not only are you isolating your chest, shoulders, and your triceps, you're not training it twice a week. You can train it twice a week. Your muscles do not take that long to recover. Train it twice a week, even 3 times. If you can manage 3 times per week, if you can make a program that actually has 3 times per week, do it. It will work. Okay, now let's get into the actual steps to grow your bench press. So the first thing is you want to use accessory movements that actually simulate the bench press. So this isn't a really big point because a lot of you are probably already doing this. You want to think of movements that work the chest, shoulders, and the triceps together. Because when you're benching, you're doing them together. You're not just doing one of them. So good examples would be dumbbell press, any kind of barbell press, any kind of iso chest press, or just any chest press machine. Definitely dips as well. Dips are really good because they almost completely simulate the bench press movement. Weighted push-ups, if you can manage that. Even deficit weighted push-ups are really good. And the key movement that I'm going to talk about is a larsen press. The larsen press is something I don't think a lot of people are talking about because it's not that well known, or at least it wasn't a while ago, but it's pretty relevant now, I'd say. And the larsen press is basically the bench press without leg drive. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, bench is a movement where it's mainly about your upper body strength. So by removing your legs, you are strictly working your upper body strength. If you need a larsen press tutorial, there's a million videos out there on YouTube. Just watch one of those. Is a really useful movement for bench press strength. Increasing volume, as I mentioned before, increasing frequency of training, but also increasing the volume of your training. So let's say you're doing 3 sets of bench today. Next week, bump it to 4. If you're doing 4, bump it to 5. More than 5 is not really necessary. You can do another exercise instead. Increasing your volume will help. It's a different kind of way to build more muscle, to build more strength. So increasing your volume is another way. Increasing your intensity is another way, but I'm assuming you're already training to failure and you're already training as hard as you possibly can. But if you're not, then that's obviously something you got to keep in mind, because if you're not training till failure, you're going to end up as a failure. So you need to use double progressions or volume progressions. Those are the main ways, in my opinion, to build your bench press. So what you do when you're a beginner is you do something called a linear progression, where basically you add new weight to the bar pretty much every week, or at least every other week. When you get more advanced, you can't do that. So you need to do something called a double progression. So for the first week, let's say you're doing 3 sets of bench. 3 sets of 8 with 225. You hit 3 sets of 8, that's all good. The next week, you want to try and add 1 rep to at least one of the sets. So the next week, it's 3 sets of 9 reps, 8 reps, and 8 reps. That's progress. That's 1 extra rep in a week. By like week 4-ish, you might be doing a 3 by 9. By week 6, maybe a 3 by 10. So once you get to 3 by 10, remember, you're tracking all of this down. Like, you're keeping this in your mind. 3 by 10 on week 6, maybe week 5 if you got good genetics. You drop the weight, you increase the weight rather, you drop it back down to 3 sets of 8. So let's say you're doing 225. Once you get to 3 sets of 10 with 225, you drop the, I keep saying drop the weight. You increase the weight to 235 and you do another 3 sets of 8. And every week you try and progress by at least 1 rep. If you can't, it's fine. Know that you probably need recovery, you probably need more food, but next week, you increase the number of reps. And so that's a double progression in essence. And remember, you're in a surplus this entire time, so you're pretty much going to grow no matter what. Assuming you're training hard and all your variables are down, good, you're going to increase, you're going to build muscle. Like, there's just no way you don't. If you have a stimulus, if you recover, you're going to build muscle. Like, it's that simple. So that's the double progression. What about the volume progression? It's a little bit differently, as it's called volume progression. You're progressing with volume. So if you do 3 sets of 8 in week 1, you do 4 sets of 8 the next week. Now you might not get 4 sets of 8, you might get 3 sets of 8, and then the 4th set you get like 7 or 6. Okay, next week you aim for 4 sets of 8. And you build up, you get to 5 sets of 8 after a few weeks, and then you drop back down to 3 sets and you increase the weight. So you get down to 3 sets of 8, now you increase it to 235 instead of 225 in the same example. But now you're still doing the same number of reps, you're still in the same rep range, you're just dropping the amount of volume. In the double progression, it was the weight, it was the reps that got dropped. In the volume progression, it's the volume, the number of sets that gets dropped as you increase the weight. So as I mentioned, you need to train your entire body as much as you're training your push muscles pretty much, because a lot of the bench press is your lower body, a lot of it is your lats. Because think about it, your back is the base. If you have a bad base, you're not going to be able to press very well. So build up your back, build up all of your muscles, and that eccentric when you're coming down on the bar with the bar, that is a very crucial part. That's where a lot of people might mess up, like going for 1 rep maxes, because they're not bringing it down properly. When you have strong lats and a strong back from a lot of rowing, you can control that bar down and kind of use your back to like control the weight down, so that when you push out with your chest, you're not messing anything up. You're not ruining the movement. You're controlling the eccentric and you push on the concentric, okay? There's a lot of different ways to do the form. I'm not going to get into the form of the bench press, like trying to go for 1 rep maxes. Personally, that's not what I'm into, so I'm not going to give advice on it. Overall bench press strength, I mean, you need to increase your lats, your entire back pretty much. You need to get a bigger back for a better base. Obviously, stronger push muscles because those are the main muscles you're using. And don't skip your legs, bro. Don't skip leg day. The glutes are huge. Lower back is huge. Hamstrings and quads, everything matters. For the bench press, every muscle matters. You got to train them all pretty much equally hard. Grow every part of your body. Just add mass. Mass moves mass, and so you're going to get stronger by doing that. Simple. And of course, I'm going to emphasize this one, train in all the rep ranges. So a lot of guys are going to think, oh, I got to train low reps if I want to get stronger. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. If you want to get stronger, you train in the 1 to 5 rep range, the 5 to 10 rep range, and the 10 to 15 rep range. Every rep range you train in. Depends on the exercise, but train in every rep range. There's no reason to isolate yourself just for strength. It's not really going to work like that because you probably want to build muscle too, and building more muscle will help you move more weight. So if you only train in the 1 to 5 range, how are you going to get a good pump? How are you going to get a good overall workout? You need to train in every rep range. So I tried to compress this video to be as short as possible. It's pretty decent, but I gave just general advice on how to grow your bench press. Appreciate you watching till the end of the video, bro. Reject mediocrity, embrace mastery, and I'll see ya later, bro.